Hello and welcome to the Lifestyle Dentist Podcast. I'm your host, Garth Hatch, and super excited for our episode today. I've been waiting for this for a while. Expert, great friend of mine, and just an amazing international speaker, best-selling author, and expert in the world of functional medicine, nutrition, health optimization, sleep, so many different areas where you can really change your life for the better. I was introduced to Ryan first from mutual mastermind that we're in and a mutual friend, Adriana Kay, and really starting with my own journey into the rabbit hole of functional medicine, trying to improve my own health, got to know Ryan better and was blown away with his expertise and really the way you simplify things. That's one thing I really love about you, Ryan, is you can take complex ideas in health optimization and sleep and breath work, so many different areas, and make it simple and user friendly that the average person can do, not some pie in the sky miracle morning that it's tough to do on a regular basis, but you can really simplify things. And that's one thing that love about you, Ryan. So thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show, brother.
Appreciate the kind intro, Garth. I'm pumped to be here, man.
Awesome. Well, let's just go ahead and dive right in. For those that don't know you, maybe a little background on Ryan Kennedy and your journey into health optimization and functional medicine.
I got interested in health at a young age, Garth, and it was a bit of a pain to purpose journey. So I don't have the best genetics when it comes to health. And anyone that sees me is always kind of surprised to hear that because, they're like, well, Ryan, you're sort of fit, I guess. Like, what do you mean you don't have good genetics? Well,
which he's being bashful because he looks like a Men's Health cover guy.
Thank you. I'm flattered, Garth. Well, when I say that, what I mean is, I have two older brothers, both of which are obese and overweight. My parents were overweight the bulk of their adult lives. By the time I was in the fourth grade, all four of my grandparents had passed from chronic disease. So none from tragic accidents, all from cancer or complications from diabetes or stroke. And so I wasn't exactly dealt the best hand when it comes to longevity and health from a genetic perspective. And when I was in high school, this was back in 2008, my mom was diagnosed with cancer at a fairly young age. And I remember at the time.
How old were you at the time when that happened?
I was 14, 15 at the time.
Yeah.
And so remember when she was going through this journey, Garth, just being a young guy thinking, well, surely her doctors, her oncologists are going to help her through this. She'll do whatever treatment. She'll be good. It'll be all fine. And I remember going through this process, man. And, really her doctors telling her things I look back on now, and it's just unbelievable. Telling her what you eat doesn't matter. No vitamins, no herbs, no natural therapies are going to help you. Like you have one route, one option if you want to survive. And that's what a lot of people refer to as slash poison burn: surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation, the standard of care when it comes to cancer treatment in our medical system. And so she listened, these people are the experts. They know what's best. And unfortunately, man, she passed away 2 years later in 2010 in large part because of the misinformation she received, obviously with some of the treatment options where she was prescribed these ice cream based milkshakes and lots of sugar to keep weight on during chemo. And obviously we know that's fuel for the fire when it comes to cancer. But more than that, the misinformation she received for decades leading up to that point, just like millions and millions of other people in our country. This was before social media, before, widespread use of the internet was, really actionable. This was in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, where she was listening to food guide pyramids. We were eating, lots of whole grains as a family, swapping out butter for margarine, all the stuff that you and I can look back on now and say, this is such ridiculous information to be sharing, but she didn't know any better. Just like a lot of people don't know any better. And so that's really in large part why she got sick, was just following this government guidelines and this guidance from the mainstream media that she thought was the right way to do things. And so that really...
pyramid.
Yeah, man. That really kind of sparked something in me where I wasn't healthiest at the time. I was a senior in high school. My dad, unfortunately, didn't have the best emotional intelligence. So he he didn't know how to deal with the situation, and got remarried and kind of left a little bit, left a picture. So I was kind of riding solo, man. And I was just going down a bad path, realized pretty quick, man, this is not the path I want to go down. And I also realized, like, man, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. As my mom was going through these treatments, she wasn't worried about any career goals or what car she was driving or what house we lived in. She just wanted to survive and be there for her family. And so I kind of had this seed planted in me as a young guy of like, man, your health is all you got. That's the foundation for everything. And so I decided to pursue health as a study in my undergrad in kinesiology, and was more on the fitness, physical therapy side of things, studying biomechanics, working with people in PT clinic. And while that was all fine and good, Garth, I realized, man, I was having patients come in for their PT sessions, and twice a week. But outside of that, they were eating horrible, weren't prioritizing sleep or stress management or doing any lab testing or replenishing nutrient deficiencies or managing inflammation. All these other areas of their health were being neglected. And that's when I realized, man, there's got to be a better way. So I went back to school. I studied naturopathic and functional medicine in post-grad school, and got board certified in clinical nutrition, and wanted to really bring a more holistic lens, more broad scope into this whole picture of health and wellness, because all these areas are interconnected. Your nutrition, your exercise, your emotional health, your sleep, your gut health, your hormones, like all these things interplay with each other in such a powerful way. And so that is how I came to what I do now, where I run a functional medicine practice. I consult with awesome patients from all across the globe, all walks of life, really helping them to dial in all these things, all these areas of their health to perform at their best, look their best, feel good, and ultimately live a long, healthy, fulfilling life.
Wow. So many different things we can unpack there. I mean, first of all, thank you for sharing, brother. That's, no matter how you slice it, that must have been really tough at a young age, and, impressionable teenage years, to lose your mom like that. A lot of times a devastating blow like that, especially in the teenage years, can direct you one way or the other. Either can crush you and send you down a bad path of be that substance abuse or just a lot of challenges to try and cope with such emotional situation, or it could be rocket fuel. And in your situation, kudos to you for using that as rocket fuel to find answers yourself, and then also to use that to help your mankind, fellow mankind, to how they can have better health and nutrition. So kudos to you for taking that route, and all the people you've served because of that. So
Thank
thanks
you,
for
man.
that. Absolutely. You mentioned blood work and testing, and that was something that was a new concept to me. And I, as dentists, I mean, this is lifestyle dentists. Most people on this podcast are dentists or some sort of healthcare professionals. And I'll be the first to admit, being trained in Western medicine, which I think is second to none in areas like trauma, so many different areas where our Western medicine is the leading standard in the world. But yet, in areas of chronic disease, nutrition, most of the major killers are things that are preventable. And we are awful in modern, and I think there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of financial reasons for that, unfortunately, and there's all kinds of rabbit holes we could go into with that. But I just leave it at a basic understanding that, and I have many physician friends too, they're the first to admit, you do not get, I mean, you might get an afternoon, a day or two training in nutrition, but most of what you're learning is FDA approved drugs that the drug companies push,
That's right.
and that's about all you can prescribe.
Yeah.
Even if you want to, and I think most physicians, as most dentists, we want to do what's right for our patients. We want to do the best we can, but we just have not been trained and essentially been handcuffed in a lot of ways on
Totally.
what you can and can't prescribe. And so when I personally, on my journey, not feeling as healthy as I'd like, a little more sluggish, a little more brain fog, and wanted to optimize my health, and initially went down that rabbit hole of functional medicine, got my blood work pulled, noticed hormone levels being low, my testosterone low. It was in the 400s initially, which isn't awful, and it according to modern day standards, that's normal, but it was not normal. And just going down that ways to optimize it. and to really improve it, my last reading was 1200, which is awesome. I mean, that was all natural too,
That's
not any
amazing.
testosterone, doing different natural remedies, and we can go more into that too. But it really opened my eyes to what's possible if you do optimize your health, your nutrition, supplements, things like that. Can you talk a little bit on the importance of getting your blood work, and not just blood, gut, other tests, just to kind of get a baseline of where you're at and how you can improve your health?
Yeah, man, if you're not testing, you're just guessing. I think most people understand that really you got to understand what's going on under the hood or else you're flying blind. And that goes in all areas of life, but your health is especially important because there's so many options. There's so many different supplements that are marketed on the internet. There's so many different diets that you could follow. There's so many different ways of living. And it's very dependent on your biology, on your individual levels and what you need. And so there's a lot of testing I use in my practice. Blood work is a great place to start for most people. And if you go into a typical physician's office, they'll run a CBC and a CMP, which looks at your blood counts. It looks at very basic markers, very, very small amount of biomarkers that doesn't really paint the full picture. So when it comes to blood work, I like to do more comprehensive panels that look at hormones, look at a full thyroid workup, look at different vitamins and minerals, things that also are assessing more detailed looks of your cardiovascular system with, ApoB and all these different markers that are much more telling than just your typical total cholesterol, LDL, HDL type thing. And then there's a number of other things that are really useful to look at via blood that could be very helpful in knowing what specific nutrients do you need more of? What specific changes should you be making to your diet? So that's a very good place for people to start and relatively affordable. I mean, a few $100, even if you pay out of pocket, can get you a very comprehensive blood work. And I can send you a link to the lab I use and how people could order
Please.
this for themselves if they decide. It's direct to consumer. You don't need a prescription or from a doctor. You can totally take control of your own health. In addition to blood work, as you mentioned, there's a lot of functional medicine labs I use to look at different imbalances in your microbiome, like yeast or fungal overgrowth or candida. Also things like SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, different pathogens in the gut. And this can be really responsible for a lot of bloating or gas or GI discomfort, loose stool, constipation, all these different inflammatory bowel issues that people struggle with so commonly today. We can find out what the root cause is, correct that with targeted enzymes and herbs and probiotics based on what you need, and see remarkable benefits. Same thing applies to like your neurotransmitters. I love testing serotonin and dopamine and stress hormones because this really gives us an insight of what we need to do to support your energy, your motivation, your focus, your mood, your mental health. Really, really key. There's a whole battery of different tests, everything from heavy metals and minerals to food sensitivity panels. And, it can feel a little overwhelming for some people when they're first getting into this, but that's where having someone in your corner that can kind of look at the full picture and say, all right, here's where you're at. Here's your challenges. Here are your goals. These are the types of tests that I think would be really useful. And it's not to say that these things are cheap. And I understand that not everyone has the means to invest, a few $100 or $500 into lab testing. But for anyone that does, Garth, it is a tremendous ROI and a very, very important starting place to then be able to say, okay, here's what I want to be focusing on in terms of improving these imbalances we identified, improving these different biomarkers that came back off. And then you have a targeted path to move forward. You're not just like throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks. You're actually like, hey, here's what my body needs. Here's what the data is showing. And here's what's going to really support my health the best.
That makes total sense. And I could see that even with myself. For example, I had a gut test and never really thought that I had any gut issues, anything that stood out. I felt like I normally had fairly decent energy, digestion, things like that. And with the gut test, found out I had 2 parasites, which I have no clue how I got them. We be that when I was did a service mission in Brazil, traveling to Mexico, or who knows. Somehow I got two parasites, and by doing some natural cleansing and gut health, able to eliminate those. But I would have never known. And my normal checkups, they've never shown that. I've had regular checkups for years, and nothing showed up. Nothing was even tested. And so I think a lot of these things, they for whatever reason, unfortunately, either knowingly or unknowingly, don't even want to look and don't recommend most of these basic tests where, and coming back to the the discussion of cost, yeah, it could be a couple $100, even a couple $1,000. But if you compare that to one illness and where you're in the hospital for a day or two, where you're talking could be tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars, and just your overall wellness, it really is pennies compared to the benefit,
Without
So
a doubt,
for
man.
most
And
people,
looking beyond your example of how costly illness is, look at the opportunity cost. How
Mhm.
much opportunity you're leaving on the table in your career and your business and whatever you do in the world if your energy is suboptimal. You don't have the vitality to go out and really crush it in whatever your professional path is. Same thing with your
Mhm.
mental clarity and your focus and your motivation and your stress management and all these things that have a direct tie to your earning potential.
Mm-hmm. So true. So true to really optimize that. So I guess a way we could do everything is kind of go through an optimal day. Like, what would an optimal day look like, and different recommendations you'd have, health hacks. And if we start, we could start first thing in the morning. First thing in the morning, what are some different things you would recommend as somebody awakes to, I guess we can start with sleep either before or at the end, because that's a big portion I know just from that weekend I was working with you. But why don't we go through an ideal morning? What would an ideal morning kind of start and end, for an ideal morning?
Yeah, great question, man. So got to set yourself up for success when it comes to your sleep and a lot of these things. And a lot of what gets promoted on the internet and different by different health professionals in the space is just it's very extensive. You got these long 2-hour morning routines that involve all these different practices. And what I've seen in my practice, Garth, is that while a lot of these habits and things that these actions could be effective for someone, it's just not realistic to sustain that. The people I work with in my practice are typically business owners, entrepreneurs, busy professionals, investors, people that they got a lot on their plate. They're taking care of their families. They got a lot of work in front of them. They don't have the luxury to spend the first 3 hours of every day just, meditating and doing all these other practices that can be effective, again, helpful. I'm not trying to say that these things don't help, but they're just not time efficient for everyone.
Yeah,
So
not practical.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. What I like to do is find what is the minimum effective dose. How can we find the maximum impact with the least amount of time and effort? That's the sweet spot. That's really what delivers the most sustainability throughout someone's health journey. And so a few things upon waking that I find are imperative. I call it the morning trifecta. Number one, hydrate. You got to get some water. We lose about a pound of water overnight just while we're sleeping. And so
wow.
having water before you reach for any coffee, before you do anything else in your system, really, really useful. And to amplify this, I like to add minerals and electrolytes and trace elements to the water because H2O is just part of the equation. You also need all these minerals to properly hydrate your cells and to get your bowels moving and to get your energy systems online. So grabbing some water, real simple, virtually free, very effective way to start the day. Number two in this trifecta.
Not to interrupt that, but just with the minerals, and I know I'm sure it may be customized based on your blood work what that is, but for the average Joe, any recommendations on minerals first thing in the morning?
Two options. One is a product I really like and recommend to almost everyone called Relight. Relyte. Relight's made by a company called Redmond Minerals, and it just has an awesome quotient of sodium, potassium, magnesium, chloride, all your primary electrolytes, as well as trace minerals. So it's got over 70 more trace minerals that, again, just add this hydrating quality to your water. Really help to support your adrenals, really help to support your body in the morning. There's a product that's very popular electrolyte wise called LMNT. A lot of people use. This Relight is less than half the cost and a way better formula. So I highly recommend it over some of these more heavily marketed products. If you're, on the other hand, not wanting to use nutritional supplements, a kind of quote unquote natural alternative to this would be to use a little bit of sea salt. Depending on your body weight, that could be anywhere from 1/4 teaspoon up to a half a teaspoon of a mineral rich sea salt, combined with some fresh squeezed lemon or lime. Fresh squeezed lemon or lime is going to give you some of those enzymes. It's going to give you some of the potassium. It's to complement the sodium from the sea salt. And a mineral-rich sea salt will contain a lot of these trace minerals as well. So those are the two routes you can go. Supplementation, where you just buy a high-quality product like Relight, add a scoop to your water, shake it up, done deal. Or you can kind of do a DIY version if that's preferable. And that's going to be really helpful for the hydration element. The number two component of this is morning sun. So we are solar powered animals, Garth. And the first thing that really triggers to our body, hey, it's daytime. We're no longer hibernating. Let's start to upregulate our energy systems. Let's start to get our mitochondria going. Let's start to get our fat burning and our metabolism going, is sunlight, morning light into our eyes. And so upon waking, grabbing that water and getting outside, because window glass blocks a lot of these beneficial spectrums and reduces the light intensity. So go out on your deck, go out on your front yard, your backyard, whatever, and get some morning light. And it doesn't have to be like sun is beating you in the face. You just need to be outside, and you're going to soak up a lot of these beneficial spectrums. And that's going to help to anchor that circadian rhythm, start up regulating your mood and your dopamine, and have all these benefits. So being outside, minimum time, 5 to 10 minutes. That's all you really need for these benefits. You could stay out for longer. 20, 30 minutes would be great, but 5 to 10 minutes will accomplish these outcomes I'm describing while you're outside drinking your water. Now, I like a habit stacking because, again, in the same 10-minute window, we could do all three of the morning trifecta. We could be drinking your water, getting your morning sunlight, and then I like to do something that just anchors you mentally, some sort of a mindset practice. Now, that could be listening to some affirmations. That could be a meditation practice. That could be some journaling. That could be some prayer. That could be some Bible reading. That could be just reading a book of something you're interested in. It could be listening to a podcast like this. Something that just gets you kind of mentally stimulated and mentally anchored before you dive into your emails and your messages and all the other stuff that's more reactive. Again, you don't have to spend an hour out there meditating or reading. You could spend 10 minutes. 10 minutes of some sort of mindfulness practice while drinking your water, while getting your sunlight. So that's the kind of first morning trifecta that I think is low-hanging fruit for everyone. And that, again, that mindfulness practice could be breath work. It could be something else altogether, but just something that kind of gets you anchored. And then moving beyond that, first call it 10 minutes of the day. I really think, things could branch out from there. Some people like to jump into work. Some people have kids to take care of. Some people have other responsibilities, and that's totally fine. But if you do have the luxury of spending, 30 or 40 minutes instead of 10 minutes, the second kind of half of this equation, I think is great, is to get some movement in, some sort of an exercise. That could be a walk outside. It could be a resistance training workout. It could be a cardio session. It could be any number of things, but something that just gets your heart rate up and gets the blood flowing, gets your brain more activated. And I like to stack that with some caffeine. So that could be some tea. I personally consume yerba mate tea. A company called Wellness Naturals makes the highest quality, best loose leaf yerba mate on planet Earth. It's awesome. And I'll brew it and then squeeze some fresh lemon in there. And it is phenomenal alternative to coffee. But if you like a nice cup of organic Joe, have some cup of coffee, totally fine. And that's going to help to, again, just kind of upregulate metabolism and fat burning during your exercise session. It's also going to give you a little boost, for people that sometimes benefit from a little boost in the mornings to get their exercise going. And then you're getting your movement in, and you don't have to worry about it later. You don't have to worry about doing it midday or in the afternoons when you're tired from your day. So I really like that as kind of the second portion of this, and then just capping it off with, quick shower. And again, this whole thing I'm describing could all take place, the first 10 minutes on the sunlight, hydration, and mindfulness. And then this second portion could be anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on how much movement you want to do and how much exercise you have in front of you. And I think that is just a dynamite way to start the day off right.
Yeah, I've been drinking the yerba mate for a while now, since we met and did our deep dive. And then my son, he did a service mission in Chile and got hooked to yerba mate in the morning. And it's a great natural way to get started, focus your mind, and get the health benefits too. So yeah.
Oh, it's stellar. Awesome. It's stellar, man. It's very popular in South America, and it's much less harsh on your nervous system and adrenals than coffee. And I just find it to be more hydrating and more nourishing in a lot of ways. It's not that coffee's bad. I'll have a cup of coffee once or twice a week. Totally fine. But I find yerba mate to be a better fit for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. I also know for me personally, working out in the morning is my best routine. I've done it different days. And if I'm not going to be in the clinic, then I may do it at lunchtime or another time. But in general, if I can knock it out first thing in the morning, it just feels good because I know I got it done. A lot of times if I don't, it just doesn't happen because you get busy doing something else and with kids and work, and Absolutely. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah, 100%. And your whole day is better after that. Your mood is elevated. You're more mentally sharp. Your energy is enhanced. It's just really good to get a nice exercise session. And again, I teach a lot of my patients MED workouts, minimum effective dose, where the entire workout from start to finish is 12 to 15 minutes. You don't have to kill yourself for an hour of CrossFit. You can. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's your jam and you love fitness, like get after it by all means. But a lot of people, Garth, are just wanting to feel good, look good, be healthy. They're not an exercise enthusiast. They're not gym rats. They just want to get the benefits and they don't particularly enjoy it or look forward to it. And so for those people, having ways that you can get that type of benefit in a short time period, it really lowers that barrier to action. It really helps to build the consistency with their fitness. And because you're not beating yourself down with just a grueling, 60, 90-minute workout, you actually feel more energized the rest of the day. Sometimes if you train a little too hard in the mornings, you can feel like you're dragging in the afternoons because you beat yourself down pretty hard. This delivers kind of the best of both worlds.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. And then moving on to the next step of the morning, or whenever that is, breakfast or lunch. When do you first eat? I know there's different thoughts on that as far as intermittent fasting. Do you eat fairly soon after you wake up? Do you wait till lunchtime? Like, what's your thoughts on your first meal?
This whole concept of intermittent fasting is just compressing your eating window so that you're not eating around the clock. You're not consuming calories from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. And you have this longer window where you are quote unquote fasting. You're not consuming calories. And I think that's a fantastic practice. Where I think a lot of people go wrong, Garth, is they tend to backload their eating window. So they fast through breakfast, they don't eat anything for the first half of the day, and they break their fast at 1 or 2 p.m. for lunch, and then they have a later dinner, might even have some after dinner. And so their eating window is, let's say, 2 to 8 p.m. or 2 to 9 p.m. What I've seen clinically, lots of patients, is that front loading that eating window is so much more conducive to better health outcomes. We are designed to eat during the day. And it's during that first half of the day where your body needs fuel. You're moving and grooving, you're thinking, you're using your brain, you're using your body, like you're very metabolically active. What I've seen with a lot of people, Garth, especially women, but this can happen to men too, is that by fasting too long through the morning, you're really running on a lot of stress hormones. You're jacking up your cortisol. You might be consuming a little too much caffeine to try and suppress your appetite and make it through till lunchtime. And this does not have the best long-term impact for a lot of folks. Some people it works for, and everyone's different. But what I think works best is to break your fast with a breakfast when you begin to feel hungry. Some people that might be 2 hours after waking. Some people that might be 3 or 4 hours after waking up. I personally find somewhere around 9 to 10 a.m. is a good sweet spot to have some nutrition. And obviously that needs to be adjusted based on your schedule and whatnot. But one of my favorite things to consume in the morning is just a smoothie. Very easy to prepare, very simple. I'm drinking one right now in this little hydro flask where you can put it in an insulated water bottle. You could prepare it in the morning. You can make this at 6 a.m. and drink it 3 or 4 hours later, and it'll stay cold. It'll stay fresh. It's good to go. And so I'll typically have people I work with put some frozen fruit. Could be frozen blueberries or any frozen fruit of choice, just kind of as the base. As far as some vegetables, I really like peeled cucumber and or some raw carrots, like a handful of baby carrots. Much better for the nutritional elements in that smoothie than spinach or kale or any of these leafy greens. Leafy greens are very high in oxalates, which can be a problem for most people, as far as the kind of an anti-nutrient they contain. They taste terrible. They totally ruin the taste of your smoothie, Garth. They're horrible. So I don't use those in my smoothie at all.
Which I'm guilty of that. Because I've always heard spinach is healthy and kale's healthy, and I would load my smoothies up with spinach and kale, and it didn't taste the best, but I didn't care. I'm like, oh, it's healthy, so I was doing that. And that was another interesting thing with a food sensitivity, that I was sensitive to spinach, and I'm not sure exactly why, but it could be just the volume that I was eating. I'd put literally huge handfuls in every smoothie. So yeah, that was interesting, that some things that are considered healthy may not be the best for your body.
Totally. There's a lot of pseudo superfoods, and those would be two of the top, where people promote, like, scream from the mountaintop, leafy greens, get your greens. They're so healthy for you. And I would argue for majority of people, meaning over 50% of people I've seen clinically, they're actually a disservice. They're not only are they not doing a bunch of benefits, they're actually doing some harm. And the reason for that is some of these compounds, these plant chemical defense systems that are oftentimes referred to as anti-nutrients, Garth. So a guy named Stephen Gundry wrote a whole book on this called The Plant Paradox, where he talks about a compound called lectins that are found in certain plant foods. And not for everyone. There's some people that could eat lots of foods high in lectins and feel totally fine. But a decent percentage of the population, if they consume lectins, will get some inflammation, will feel lousy, and will have some gut distress or some brain fog or some fatigue. Well, what I think are even more pernicious than lectins is a similar kind of in this class of plant chemical defense systems is called oxalic acid. And it's oftentimes referred to as oxalates. And these are, in my opinion, from what I've seen clinically, even more harmful for people. And spinach, kale, and almonds are three of the biggest food sources. All three foods that you've probably heard are so healthy for you. Eat lots of almonds. Almonds are great, great snack. Eat lots of kale and spinach, great leafy greens, have a lot of salads. I've seen, Garth, not for 100% of people, but for over half of people I've seen clinically, when I remove these foods from their diet, they feel so much better. And there's labs you could run to see if you have an issue with oxalates, but not to get too off track. That's why I don't recommend those in my smoothies or, people I work with. I'd rather use some peeled cucumber or some carrots as a better plant source. And then I'll throw in some good quality protein powder. I can send you a link to the one I, recommend to a lot of people I work with.
Please. Yeah, we can put that in the show notes.
Yeah, we can put links to a lot of this stuff we're talking about, so it's easy for people to find and order anything they want to try out. I'll use like a healthy fat, like a cod liver oil or an MCT oil, put a tablespoon of that. You could also use, half an avocado or something along those lines. And then I'll add in a little cinnamon, Ceylon cinnamon, really fantastic for keeping your blood sugar stable throughout the day and has a lot of other beneficial nutrients in there. And it makes the smoothie taste nice. And then I'll liquefy it with some water or some light coconut milk, something along those lines, and blend that sucker up. And it is awesome. It's wonderful. And then what I find works great for people, Garth, is putting it in one of these, insulated water bottles so that it stays cold and stays fresh, and just kind of sipping on it throughout the morning. I'll drink this whole smoothie over the course of like an hour or two. As I'm talking to people, as I'm going through my workday, I'll tell you, just take a sip like you would a cup of coffee or, sip of water. And that gives you this slow bleed of nutrition that doesn't overwhelm your gut. So you maintain high alertness, high energy, high executive function, just like when you're fasting. That's one of the reasons people love fasting in the morning is they feel better than if they have a heavy breakfast with eggs and bacon and avocado and all these breakfast foods. And it's true. Your body has to divert a lot of energy and a lot of resources to break down heavy fats and proteins. So it kind of slows you down, makes you feel a little sluggish. Totally valid. This smoothie does not. And that's why I love it. I love a light breakfast. It still delivers the amino acids, still delivers the micronutrients your body needs, and you get the best of both worlds. You get the lightness and alertness as though you're fasting, but then you get all the nutrition so that you're not running on empty, you're not running on fumes, and that enables you to feel even better. And so I love this ratio of just having a light breakfast like a smoothie. Other examples could be some, cup of bone broth. You could have, fresh pressed vegetable juice. You can have all sorts of other ideas as a breakfast option, but I think this is portable. It only takes 5 minutes to prepare and it tastes great. Really, really good way to start the day nutritionally. And I prefer this for most people rather than having, let's say, eggs and avocado. Very healthy breakfast, nothing wrong with that, but it's just a lot more for your body to break down, a lot more energy drain compared to something like a smoothie.
No, that's awesome, Ryan. Wow. There's a lot of golden nuggets on that. I was curious on peeling cucumbers. Is that more just to get any possible pesticides off, or what's your thoughts on peeling the cucumbers? And then another follow-up with that smoothie, with the protein, and it may vary on, different people, but in general, do you prefer like collagen protein or whey protein or pea protein? And possible creatine? I'm curious all three of those.
Two excellent questions, Garth. So on the peeling of the cucumber, it's mostly for the consistency. If you throw a full cucumber with a peel in a blender, you'll get these chunks of peel that are just not enjoyable to drink. So it's mostly for that reason. I will say that removing the peel makes it a little easier on your digestive system as well. But I mean, if you're buying organic and high quality stuff, you don't have to worry as much on the pesticide residue. And so it's not so much for the pesticides as it is for those reasons. Now, in terms of protein, I find a pretty high percentage of, so broadly speaking, Garth, I'll say this, whey protein, a good grass-fed whey protein is the best protein when it comes to the amino acid profile. So the amount of leucine and isoleucine and valine and the different amino acids in whey protein make it the best for muscle building, recovery, all these benefits people are interested in, without a doubt. The problem is that a lot of folks don't tolerate dairy well. They don't digest dairy proteins well. So if they have whey protein, they feel bloated. They might be gassy and farting up all storm, because the whey protein's creating all this fermentation in their gut. They might also feel just a little like off, just not good digestion wise. And everyone's different. Some people can tolerate whey great. And by all means, whey protein can be a good option for those people. But I would say the bulk of people I use a plant-based protein. And it's a combination of hemp and pea protein and sacha inchi, just type of seed that's a great protein source. And it tastes great. And then the protein powder I use actually incorporates a little bit of creatine in there, creatine monohydrate. So I don't typically have people add it separately, but you totally could. You could add creatine in the smoothie. You could add creatine in your morning water. Totally fine to have it there. And creatine monohydrate for men and women, even if your goals are not to get like a lot of muscle or build like a bunch of strength, it is one of the most well-studied nutritional supplements for a multitude of benefits. And I think it's a fantastic addition for anyone to consider. So that's kind of my feedback on the protein. As far as quantity, again, varies based on weight, based on your whole nutritional picture. But most often I'll have ladies targeting about 30 grams, guys targeting about 50 grams for that morning protein in the smoothie. Again, little room for adjustment based on the person and where they're at, but that's a general guideline. And as far as the protein powder, like I said, I'll send you my favorite. It's made by a company called Mother Earth Labs. They have a great plant-based protein that checks a lot of these boxes, has some digestive enzymes in there to help break down the amino acids. It's a wonderful formula.
Hey, Ryan, one other question on that too. Soy protein. What's your thoughts on soy protein, especially for guys? I've heard guys should avoid it to prevent raising your estrogen levels. What's your thoughts on that, on soy?
Yeah, so the soy protein powders, like if you're talking about a soy protein supplement, is not a huge concern for me, in my opinion. And here's why, Garth. When you're looking at a food-based soy product, so let's say edamame or tofu or maybe some soy milk, made from soybeans, these do contain phytoestrogens, and they do contain some compounds that wouldn't be the best for men or women, in large quantities. In small quantities, it's okay. But in large quantities, women can feed, your increased risk of different breast cancers and ovarian cancers and things like that from all these phytoestrogens. For men, obviously, it can impact testosterone negatively. So I don't recommend people go and eat a bunch of soy food stuff in general. Now, when you're taking the protein, you're extracting the amino acids in form of a supplement, a protein powder that's a soy protein. It's actually okay. I don't personally use it, and I don't see a reason to, because pea protein is a great option for plant-based people. But it does have a good amino acid profile. I will say, for any vegans or plant-based individuals that, use soy protein, I usually won't say like, oh my gosh, this is terrible, we got to remove this from your protocol. I usually say like, listen, dude, if you like it, have at it. Not a big deal.
That makes sense. Okay, no, that's good. So we got the morning then, got say we got our workout in, we got our smoothie shake, and getting into lunchtime. Say midday. What would your recommendation to be midday, either food and or sun, anything else?
Yeah, great question. So there's a few things I'd prioritize. Number one is making sure you're keeping your lunch on the lower carbohydrate side, because you don't want that spike in blood sugar to lead you to feeling fatigued in the afternoons. Now, just to be clear, Garth, I'm not a big keto, low carb guy in general. I think carbs are really important for human nutrition. I think they help with thyroid hormone conversions. They help with your sex hormones. They help with your sleep and your serotonin production. I think therapeutic keto diets can be useful in certain people and contexts, but generally speaking, I don't say this because I think carbs are the devil. I say this because you want to maintain stable glucose through the afternoon if you want to feel and perform your best. And so I like people to do a light protein and some veggies. A light protein would be something like a shrimp or fish or some type of seafood. Much easier for your gut to break down than having a big steak, for lunch. Eggs could also be a good option as a pretty light protein source for this lunchtime meal. And that's going to be chicken and turkey would be decent options too. I usually save more meats for dinner. Because again, even though meat is very nutritious and has a lot of benefits if you're getting quality meat sources, it does take a lot for your body to break it down compared to having a fillet of salmon or mahi mahi or some shrimp. So those would be my preferred options for lunch, would be a seafood as a protein, whatever vegetables you enjoy. It could be some sauteed zucchinis, it could be some bell peppers, it could be a little tomato cucumber salad, millions of options, whatever, floats your boat, whatever you enjoy. And that's kind of what I think works as a really good light lunch. You don't want to be eating a ton of calories. You don't want to be eating a ton of high fats. You don't want to be eating a ton of high carbs. You want to just keep it to a light protein option to maintain that energy throughout the day. So that's kind of food wise what I suggest. Two things that I think are really critical for this. One is trying to go for some movement after lunch. So get out for a little walk. Could be as short as 10 minutes. Could be as long as 30 or 40 minutes if you have that luxury with your lunch break. But trying to get outside for some fresh air, some movement, some sun exposure, really, really effective. Now, for people that work from home, I think it's really valuable to get some sensible sun exposure where you go out and get in your backyard with some skin exposure. Maybe take your shirt off, or you wear a tank top and some shorts and lay out in the sun for 10 or 15 minutes. You don't want to be out there for 2 hours and sunburn, but 10 or 15 minutes is going to get you some great vitamin D, because we only synthesize vitamin D, Garth, when the sun is at a high solar angle. So between, call it 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. That's your only window for getting vitamin D. The morning sun is beneficial for a number of other reasons. Same thing with late afternoon sun, like around sunset. Amazing for all these other benefits, but you will not get any vitamin D during those times. You have to be out when the sun is at a high solar angle. And I like to lay out, in my backyard. Obviously, I have a lot of privacy, so I'm able to, pretty much not have any clothes on and be able to soak in all the good sun. Not everyone has that luxury if you're at an office and you're just maybe walking around the neighborhood or something like that. Maybe the best you could do is rolling up your sleeves and getting out for 10 or 15 minutes, which is great. Much better than nothing. So those are the two things I think are really effective to keep your mood, your energy, your focus really dialed in through the rest of the day.
So bring your swimsuit to the office.
Yeah, right.
To the dental clinic. Yeah. That was something too that stuck out with me when we were doing our deep dive weekend, was just thinking of your body like a solar panel. That you want more skin exposure if you can, just to synthesize more vitamin D.
Yep.
And that's the best way to get the vitamin D. So yeah. And on that note too, supplements. What's your thoughts on vitamin D supplements if you are in an area that doesn't have a lot of sunlight, or wintertime, things like that?
It's essential, Garth. I mean, you need to get your vitamin D level via blood testing to between 60 and 80 nanograms per milliliter. That is the optimal level of vitamin D. And there's a lot of research out of the Vitamin D Research Council that really shows those to be the optimal level. Now, most people are not able to achieve that through sunshine alone. You just can't, because of either proximity to the equator, your ethnicity and your skin tone, different genetic SNPs. Even if you're prioritizing this stuff and you're like, Ryan, I'm outside every day, solar noon for 10, 15 minutes. To achieve that level year round, not common for people, Garth. So taking some vitamin D, best to stack it with other cofactors like vitamin K2 and magnesium and boron and these other constituents that really support the vitamin D pathways in your body. Really, really helpful. How much you need greatly depends on the person. I mean, I might have one person I'm working with where 2,000 units a day is enough to get their levels up to where we need them. Another person might need 12,000 units. I would say the average somewhere between 5 and 10,000 IUs per day of vitamin D is enough for most people to get up to a good spot. And I actually saw some research that pointed at 8,000 international units of D3 as far as the dosage for supplements was like kind of the median, the average of what people needed to achieve this good vitamin D status.
That is interesting. And a benefit of vitamin D too, it's pretty cheap. I mean, you think about it, you can buy a bottle at Costco or Walmart or whatever, and for $10, for a huge stack. I mean, hopefully that's good quality.
Yeah, I wouldn't rely on those sources, but even if you were to buy a really good quality source, like NOW makes a great vitamin D K2 combo. To your point, Garth, I mean, it's less than $5 a month to be getting this amount of vitamin D on an ongoing basis. And it's one of the top things you do. I mean, the research on reduction of risk in a multitude of different types of cancer is quite staggering. I mean, how big of an impact this makes into your immune system and prevention of colds and flus, to your sleep quality, to your mood. Low vitamin D is linked with depression. I mean, there's all these different really, really interesting data on the importance of this particular vitamin. And I think it's gotten a lot of more attention than other vitamins, but it doesn't mean that other deficiencies, other vitamins being low or imbalanced wouldn't have other profound impacts like this. And that's what I see clinically in my practice when I test people for their vitamins, their minerals, and we see, oh, you're actually low in riboflavin, or your vitamin B12 is deficient, or we aren't getting enough magnesium, or your zinc and copper ratios are out of whack, or any number of other examples. When we correct that, the benefits people see are profound, man. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. All from natural vitamins, and we always try and get them through food whenever we can, but sometimes a little better living through science with some targeted supplementation is what we need. And it is quite remarkable how important this stuff is, and it doesn't get enough attention. Everyone in the longevity space is talking about NMN and resveratrol and NAD and nicotinamide riboside and all these kind of sexy longevity supplements. And you know what, Garth? I think it's total nonsense. I don't take any of that stuff. I don't take any of those supplements. I don't recommend them to anyone. I don't think they're that helpful. I really don't. I think when it comes to supplementation, people should be looking at what are the essential micronutrients my body needs that I'm not getting enough of through my diet, and where can I fill in the blanks by taking some targeted supplements for those things. That is what moves the needle for people. All these longevity blends and supplements promoting this stuff, I think it's all complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah, that's good to know that. Yeah, since we met Ryan and did our deep dive, me just implementing the vitamin D, magnesium, and vitamin B12 with creatine. I try to do some creatine in the morning and then once or twice throughout the day. That's been a game changer for me.
Oh yeah,
and they're basic supplements you can get. On that note, any other things that you could think of if you were to say, hey, the average Joe, hopefully they're getting tested so they can really dial it in. But if somebody didn't want to or couldn't afford to get tested, what would you say are some real basic, 80-20 type vitamins or supplements that people should be taking? And it may be different guys or girls, but yeah, whichever way you want to go on that.
I will send you a link to put in the show notes of a really good organic vitamin mineral complex that I think lays a fantastic foundation as far as just getting this baseline amount of vitamin D3 combined with vitamin K, combined with all these minerals like selenium and iodine and copper and zinc and all these really important nutrients that are just simply hard to get enough of through food alone. I mean, our soils are depleted, our food is poorly grown. We don't have the micronutrient density that our ancestors had hundreds of years ago. And so I think that's a really good foundation. It also brings in all your methylated B vitamins, food source of vitamin C, vitamin A. I mean, that is a one-stop shop to cover your bases for a lot of people. And I think that's a really good way to go about it. If you're like, hey, you know what? I don't want to do testing, or I just want something that's going to almost as nutritional insurance. Make sure I'm getting enough of all these important vitamins and minerals that maybe I'm not able to obtain through food alone. That would be a great option. Other things I see a lot of people benefit from is good quality magnesium. We just live in a high stress environment, Garth. I mean, we are exposed to stress no human throughout evolution was prepared for. I'm talking worldwide news, social media, online businesses, having all this technology at our fingertips. It's a blessing, but it's also a curse, man, in that it creates all this stress for us, not to mention the physiological stress of chemicals in our air, toxins in our water, all the pesticides in our food, all the EMFs and electrosmog and different frequencies that are blasting our bodies. I mean, dude, we are not evolved to take on this onslaught of stressors. And stress depletes magnesium, our body's master mineral. So by bringing in some more magnesium, and I can send you a link for my favorite magnesium product too, really low-hanging fruit for a lot of people to manage stress, keep their nervous system healthy, not to mention the hundreds of other benefits and uses of magnesium in the human body. So that's one I see really commonly. We already touched on minerals like electrolytes in the morning, creatine. These are things that I just find myself almost across the board with a lot of people I work with as good foundations, really good foundations. And then obviously the more targeted stuff depends on what they need. I don't think people should just be blindly taking any probiotic supplement. I think you should see where you're at, what your body needs, because some people have too much bacteria. And if you're taking a bunch of probiotics, and an overpopulated bacteria count in your gut, it's going to actually do more harm than good. I also don't think people should be blindly taking a lot of things that go beyond just these essentials I'm describing without proper testing and knowing what you need.
No, that's great advice. So moving on then, Ryan, let's move into say afternoon, evening now. What are some good dietary and maybe lifestyle hacks for as you move on throughout, the end of the day?
Coming back to the meal timing stuff we talked about with breakfast, I think having an earlier dinner is one of the most important key dominoes people can focus on to improve their sleep, to improve their body composition, as far as their body fat percentage, to improve a whole number of things. And it's common sense when you think about it, Garth. When we eat late at night, when we have all this calories, all this energy consumption before bed, let's say an hour or two before we go to sleep, if you're eating your last meal or snacking at 8 or 9 p.m. and you're going to bed at 10 or 11, well, your body has very little energy expenditure while you're sleeping. You're freaking lying there, dude. So what do you think is going to happen to all that excess, all that surplus of calories you just consumed? It's going to get stored as body fat. Additionally, your body's now diverting all this energy towards breaking down that late meal rather than diverting energy to repair and recovery and rejuvenation and detoxification and all the other things that we want to happen while we're sleeping. So I am not a fan of late night meals. So I like to eat an earlier dinner. I'm a bit of a crazy person, so I eat dinner very early. I eat dinner at like 3, 4 p.m. And like I'll work after dinner. A lot of people see dinner as like the end cap of their day, but I like to eat and then I'll still have patient consults and wrap up my day around 6 or 7 or whatever. But then I don't have to worry about food. I'm all done for the day. So I think having that delta between your last bite of food and going to sleep is long as possible, really valuable for most people. 3 to 4 hours minimum is fair. So I think normal person that's eating dinner at 6:30, really good time. Just no snacking, no food consumption beyond that. Really helpful.
Yeah. For me, and just so you know, I did swimming. I've exercised throughout my life. Never in my life have I had a 6-pack until now, like till just this last years two. And just by getting my overall health dialed in. And I think that's one of the biggest things is just avoiding eating late, because I would do that all the time. I'd have a real late meal. It's churning in my gut all night. I don't sleep as well. It's adding the fat, but just having that break, giving your body a little rest where it can not have to digest and then get a good sleep, I think is a huge game changer.
Huge game changer, Garth. And for people where their schedules don't allow for that, let's say you work in the office, you get home, you take your kids to practice or school or whatever, extracurriculars you have to take care of. And by the time you get home and can actually sit down for a meal at 7 or 8 o'clock, that's the reality for some folks in this season of life. Yeah. And if that's the case for you listening to this, I encourage you to just eat a light dinner. Don't eat a lot. Have a bigger lunch and then have a lighter dinner. That's going to be a better strategy if you're not able to adopt this meal timing strategy I'm discussing. Now, other things that really play a big role here, Garth, is just having good wind down practice. So trying to really kind of power down screens and social media and work on your computer and all that stuff an hour before bed. You don't have to be too crazy about it, but if your target bedtime is 10 p.m., by 9:15, you should be winding down, starting to power down a lot of this technology that's blasting you with blue light and blasting you with a lot of mental stimulus. And then other things I find really useful in the evenings, a little bit of deep stretching with some deep nasal breathing, really powerful 1-2 punch combo to calm down your nervous system. Just doing even just the breathing portion, doing like a 3-second inhale and a 6-second exhale, all in and out through the nose, really has a profound impact on lowering your blood pressure, lowering your resting heart rate, literally calming down your nervous system. And it's not like you have to do this for 30 minutes. You could do this for 2 or 3 minutes and it has this type of effect. It's awesome. So some deep nasal breathing, really profound. And by doubling the length of exhale versus inhale, you're really starting to create those responses in your body. And then I like to, stack it with some stretching, just opening up the back, the hip flexors. I'm not talking about a yoga class or like Warrior 3 or any of that stuff. I'm talking about just some basic floor stretching, just because our hamstrings, our hip flexors, our low back, our neck, all this stuff gets tight throughout the day, especially for, you mentioned a lot of listeners are in the world of dentistry. I mean, you're seated, hunched over, working on patients all day. Like, you got to open up and loosen up a
Walking
little bit,
along.
or it's going to take a toll over the
Mhm.
course of time. And it
Mhm.
doesn't take an hour of stretching. I have
Yeah.
developed a whole stretching protocol for my patients, Garth. And what's really fascinating when you dive into the literature is that small stretching breaks actually create more positive impact than doing like a structured 30 or 45-minute stretching. So just doing 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, 5 minutes here, intermittently throughout the day, much more impactful than if you were to go to a yoga class for an hour, which is really,
That is
I
true.
think, great news for most people because it's
That
so
is.
much easier. It's so much less
It's
daunting
doable,
and time
right?
efficient. And so I find that evening opportunity to just kind of wind down, do a little bit of stretching, really, really easy, really effective. And stacking with the deep breathing is just an awesome strategy. And there's lots of other stuff, man. I mean, some people like to journal and get their thoughts out on paper. If you feel like you struggle with like a racing mind and you're thinking about all these to-dos and ideas and all these things that going through your brain, jotting it down on paper, all those mental notes can really help calm down your mind for sleep and better rest at night. And doing some gratitude stuff, hanging with your spouse or your kids, and hanging with friends, all that's great. Having some time with your community, people that you care about in this world. And I could rattle off 20 more things that are good to do in the evenings, but I think that's a really good place for people to be thinking about is just
Oh,
having a nice little ritual to wind down. It doesn't have to be anything hard or intense or extensive, but it really does go a long way.
Ryan, this has been amazing. We could go on for like 5 more
Yeah.
hours. Seriously, this is I'm learning so much. Even after we've worked together, I'm still learning, and this is amazing. I can't believe it's almost an hour. Holy smokes, this has gone too fast. A couple things. Good news for those that would like to learn more about Ryan Kennedy and learn from him. He is going to be at our Lifestyle Dentist Mastermind in Cabo San Lucas, November 14th through the 16th or 17th. Highly recommend you if you would like to go to register early. It's going to fill up, and we literally have a hard space limit, so we can't let everybody in that would probably want to. But it's a first come first serve deal, and really get a deep dive with Ryan. We haven't even really got a chance to dive into breath work, but I've done breath work with Ryan that can be life changing. Many people in a group setting will have tears of joy and different things like that, and releasing a lot of inner anguish they may not even been aware of they had. But going to be doing some breath work sessions and health longevity hacks. And I wish we could keep going. It's crazy how fast the time's gone, Ryan. But those that would like to learn more about you or connect with you, what's the best way for people to reach out and connect with you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to your event too, Garth. I appreciate the opportunity to come share with everyone down in Cabo. As far as connecting with me, website ryankennedyhealth.com, real simple. Sharing stuff on social media. I got a podcast myself, the Ryan Kennedy Show. So real easy to find me on the interwebs. And one thing I will share, I work with a lot of patients on this stuff, but one thing you and I did, Garth, that I think might be of interest is I do work with other healthcare providers, that want to learn more about functional medicine. They want to be able to take some of these strategies and implement it with their own patients, their own clients in their own businesses. And so you and I spent a couple days together doing a practitioner training on functional medicine testing and interpreting lab results and designing protocols and kind of teaching you how you can take this and apply it to people in your own life. And so that's another thing that I offer if anyone has any interest in that.
Yeah, which was amazing, by the way. Couldn't recommend it highly enough. That was, I think, with me, the biggest rabbit hole going through down the functional medicine rabbit hole was learning for myself, and then being a healthcare professional. It's like I've gone to school for decades, and I was not aware of most of this stuff, and so I wanted to learn for myself. Just to how can I apply these things for my own health, for patients, for family members, just to know myself. And so went to San Diego and did an amazing deep dive with Ryan. Both are on blood work, on health optimization, getting our morning workout in, our sauna therapy, followed by a nice cold plunge in the cold shower. And it was amazing. Great time. So yeah, couldn't recommend that enough if people would like to go a little deeper and learn from Ryan.
I appreciate it, Garth. It's always good to connect with you, brother.
Hey, thank you so much. And thank you for those joining us, and best wishes to everyone, and do everything you can to become a lifestyle dentist. Thanks, guys.